Hello and welcome to the video. This is a quick video about motor thrust angles. Now, if you've been flying lots of flying wings or multi-rotors, you probably haven't come across this yet. But if you are flying more conventional fixed wing models with a conventional tail, you might have spotted something a bit weird, and that's that sometimes when you're looking at the motor it looks like it's pushed over to the right, or it might be pointing down a little bit and it kind of looks like the motor mount is broken, and it's not. It's done for a very good reason. So let me explain why that is and how to check whether your motor thrust angle is right and what to do if it isn't. What I would say before we get too far into this: manufacturers, I know from personal experience, tend to spend a lot of time playing around to make sure that things like the motor thrust angle are spot on for models that you buy. So unless you're unlucky and whoever glued the motor mount on was having a particularly bad day, there's a very, very good reason why that motor is in what appears to be a slightly wacky position. So let me jump on a couple of slides and kind of explain why this is the case. So the first thing we'll do is look at a conventional aircraft looking from the top. Now, normally a prop like this is going to be turning in a clockwise direction, and that has the effect of making the model yaw. So because of that, what tends to happen is the motor is tilted to the right hand side to counteract that movement, to make the model fly in a straight line. Now that seems a bit counterintuitive, but it's all to do with the way that the air is flowing around the model, hitting the rudder, and the pitch of the blades in that slightly canted over position. But the short version is it's going to make the model fly straight because it's turning in a clockwise direction, and it counteracts the yaw that induces. The next example is going to be on something like a Cub style model, a high wing trainer plane. What you might notice is the prop is pointing slightly down. And that's because if you think of it here, the plane itself, the airplane, is actually hanging from those high wings. So it's like a pendulum. So when you apply power, what's going to happen is it's going to want to swing the whole model underneath the wing and cause the nose to rise. Now, that isn't what you want, of course. So actually what you would do is you would tilt the prop down slightly so that when you gave that power, it's not going to swing up, it's going to continue to fly in a straight line. Last example I'll talk about is something like a Bixler, where you have a high mounted motor at the back. Now this is kind of the opposite problem, in that because again this model is being held in the air by the wing, then what's going to happen is as you apply more thrust, that thrust is going to happen over the top of the wing, and it's going to try and push the whole model over the top. So it's actually going to push the nose down. Again, that's not what we want. So by tilting the rotor so that it's actually pointing down, the thrust is more in line with the wing, and the result of that is when you increase the throttle, the model continues to fly straight and level. So how do you know if your thrust angle is right? Well, it's a very simple way to check, and that's to cruise and to trim your model so it's flying straight and level and is nice and stable, and then cut the throttle. And you should find that it continues in that same attitude with or without the power on. If you turn the power off and there is a big drop in the nose, or it rises, or it starts to yaw, then that's probably an indication that the thrust angle is wrong. In practice, on the pre-built models that you're going to buy, that's rarely going to be the case, but be aware that if that happens to you, that usually means that there's something wacky going on with the thrust angle, and I would check things like your motor mount hasn't broke, or that something hasn't come loose, or if it's a brand new model, I'd probably let the person who sold you it know that you're having a problem with the motor thrust angle. When I've been flying prototypes and things here, occasionally I end up having to tweak things like the thrust angle, and the way I do it is I just get little washers and I undo the motor mount and put little washers underneath whichever side needs that little bit of correction. A very small change in the angle of the motor can make a massive difference in how it behaves. So hopefully that explains a little bit why if you get a new model and you take it out of the box and it looks like the model is hopelessly out of kilter, that is the case. You'll notice it more on models that have big powerful motors and bigger props, because the tilt, particularly the one to counteract the yaw, that tilt needs to be more pronounced in order to counteract that yaw. So on the smaller models with smaller props, you might not even notice that there's a little bit of thrust angle there, but on the bigger, more powerful models, you'll worry that the motor mount has been installed incorrectly, and now hopefully now you understand it probably hasn't. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organized into easy to follow playlists that, if you're trying to learn a topic, will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.